Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This one we're going over the pretty bad 4-game NBA slate that we have for tonight on Draftkings on New Year's Eve. And I totally get it if you want to skip this slate and just enjoy your New Year's Eve because this slate is pretty gross and I'm not looking forward to it too much. But for those of you who are playing, I'm here. I'm going to help break this slate down. But before we continue, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out, really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPinell16. And if you're interested in spreadsheets about every single night for the NBA season, links in the description below for my Patreon with projections, my cheat sheet, my Discord chat, all that good stuff. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into today's slate. Okay, so up top we have Luka, but we don't know if he's going to play. And the problem is the two best players on the slate are both questionable. So that's what I'm kind of saying. This is a pretty gross slate, and there's also some other injuries as well. But Luka, I mean, he's questionable for the game. He got a left wrist sprain. No idea if he's going to play. And even if he does play, I don't think I really want to play him too much. Now, if he's a full go, and we know that there's a ton of value on the slate, and I mean a ton, so it wouldn't be that hard to fit him in. But as of right now, I do not have a lot of interest. I know the guy's one of the best players in the league. He's averaging 1.75 points per minute on the year for fantasy purposes. Near 40% usage rate. Triple-double upside every single night. Personally, I'm going to pass. I don't like the matchup. It's a slow matchup versus OKC. They're a pretty good defensive team. I just think there's better options on this slate. James Harden, he's also questionable. He's dealing with a sprained toe. I don't know how painful a sprained toe is. Never had one. I don't know, maybe someone can tell me if it hurts or not. I mean, you're going to need your toes to be able to cut on a court, so I'll give Harden a pass there, but not sure if he's going to play, but if he does, he's my favorite spend up of the slate, and it's pretty simple. If he doesn't play, we can just lock in Russell Westbrook because we know Westbrook's going to be playing for sure. Now, I will say the matchup is not good versus Denver. They actually rank first versus shooting guards and third overall defense just for points given up, so it's not a good matchup whatsoever. And they also play extremely slow. They're 27th the pace of play, while Houston is 4th, so that'll bounce out a little bit, but still don't love the spot for the Houston Rockets here. But I really don't care about matchups when it comes to James Harden, just because he's capable of taking over any single game that he is in. Plays nearly 40 minutes a night. He's averaging 1.66 points per minute, near 40% usage rate. If he's good to go, 10,500 is not a bad price for James Harden, so I'd have no problem going there. Just, again, no idea if he's going to end up playing. And as I said, Russell Westbrook, it's simple. If Harden's out, we just plug in Russell Westbrook and move on with our day because, again, it's very easy to fit in a top-end stud because we have a ton of value on this slate. And without running the numbers without Harden on the court this season, Westbrook is averaging a 41% usage rate, which is massive, and he's averaging 1.68 points per minute, which is also elite. So would definitely have a ton of interest in Russell Westbrook if that's the case. Now, the matchup is not that great versus Denver, like I already said. But, he's just going to be so good if Harden's off the court. So, I mean, he's just been so good with Harden off the court, so we'd have to have interest in Russell Westbrook. And he's been playing pretty well recently, too. 46, 52, 47, 56, 60, 53, 40, 48, 51. He's been playing very well. Now, the price has crept up. He was in that 8K range for a little bit, which was a little bit too cheap just for 2 games. And I shouldn't say it's crept up. It's kind of where he's been for the past 10 games, but he did get down to that 8K range for just a little bit. Further, but he's only 8,900, but 9,600 is not a bad price if Russell Westbrook's by his lone self with James Harden off the court. Nikola Jokic at 9,300. Not a lot of interest here, but for the most part, the past 10 games, he's been pretty solid. I mean, 33 points in only 26 minutes, that's pretty sucky. But then 65, 45, 59, 37 is a little sucky. But 58, 51, 50, 70, 44, he's been pretty good. And he's turned it up a notch. He was having a terrible start to the year. People were saying he looks slow, out of shape. But he's turned into a pretty good player the past at least 10 games, and he's had a couple of triple doubles as well, and that's what he offers us on a nightly basis. He's a good passer, he's a good rebounder, he's a good scorer, so we can pretty much do everything in the stat sheet. And then we get a nice pace up spot here for Denver versus Houston, as they are 4th in pace up play, and Denver is 27th. Now, for the most part, Houston's a pretty bad defensive team, but they are solid versus centers and point guards. But Capella is questionable, so if he would happen to miss this game, it would help Jokic, even more so. On the year, he's got a 25% usage rate, averaging 1.4 points per minute. I think Jokic is a fine GPP play. Not totally sure if I get there in cash games, just because I really don't love playing Nikola Jokic, but he tends to get overlooked, so you could definitely look his way in GPPs, and I would assume he's going to get overlooked again. Siakam, you can't play. Kyle Lowry, I like Kyle Lowry tonight, 8,800. Now, he's pretty expensive. Is this the most expensive he's been? Yeah, at least in the last 10 games, so don't love paying top dollar for guys, and I really don't love playing Kyle Lowry, but this is an elite matchup here versus Cleveland. They are one of the worst defensive teams in the league. They rank second worst just in general, and they rank 29th versus point guard, so also second worst versus point guard. So, I mean, I think he can have a pretty good game here. Now, he's going to have to pretty much have a ceiling game to pay off his 8,800 price tag, but it's not hard to fit him in if you want to. He plays huge minutes. He's averaging nearly 39 minutes per game, over 1 point per minute this season, 23% usage rate. I think he's a fine play, 8,800. I think he's a nice, safe cash game play. But if Harden's out, I'm going to find the salary to play Russell Westbrook at point guard over Kyle Lowry. But this matchup is fantastic. But I kind of like his teammate Fred VanVleet a little bit better here because he's also 400 cheaper. And I think he's pretty much just got similar upside, if not more. And a lot of what I say about Kyle Lowry can be applied here. They're pretty much the same price and almost feels like the same play. And like I said, Cleveland does suck versus guards, and VanVleet is just a consistent, safe, solid play pretty much every single night. I think you're going to get 40-plus points out of him on most nights. He's been over a point per minute, 22% usage rate. Pretty much similar numbers to Kyle Lowry, but I just feel a little bit safer with Fred VanVleet, especially if he's a little bit cheaper. So both good options, but I would prefer VanVleet just because he's a little bit cheaper. Obviously, Curry's out. D'Lo's out, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. That's going to open up a lot of value. That's what I said. There's a lot of value on this slate. Porzingis, you could look his way only if Luka's out. If Luka's in, I have absolutely no interest. But, he's been pretty good when Luka was out. I don't know if it's still in the game log here. Yeah, it is. So, versus Miami, 51, then 53, 51, 54, 44. Then I don't remember exactly when Luka came back. I think it was that San Antonio game. And then his numbers dipped, obviously, because he's worst player with Luka on the court, obviously. But with Luka off the court, he's a 29% usage rate and 1.42 points per minute, which is fantastic, especially given this price. And I will say OKC is a good defensive team. They play slow, but they do struggle down low. So I could see Kristaps Porzingis having a solid game if Luka is out. If Luka's in, I have absolutely no interest in Kristaps Porzingis. You could look Aldridge's way too, probably just in GVPs if you're game stacking this up, because this is probably going to be the best game for fantasy purposes, just because there's going to be a lot of ownership here. And he's actually been pretty solid outside of 2 games at least in the last 10. So he had 51 points in the last game. 33 is a little rough. Not terrible though, but then 65, 23 sucks, but then 46, 48, 36, 37, 40, 47. He has been pretty solid. 8 out of his last 10 games. And if you look at the matchup versus Golden State, it would actually suggest this is a pretty bad matchup down low. But Willie Cauley-Stein is out, so that's going to soften it up a little bit down low because just according to his defensive rating, he's been a solid defender this season. And the Spurs have a 115-point team total, which as of right now is the highest on the slate. I believe the Raptors will probably beat them out once that total comes out because there's only 2 totals out for the game so far. But, the Spurs are going to put up some points here versus Golden State. And he's got a 24% usage rate in the season, 1.14 points per minute. I think he's a solid mid-range play. Not a favorite play of mine, but if you're just game stacking this up, I think you can play LaMarcus Aldridge. Love, not a lot of interest. Capella, we're not even sure if he's going to end up playing or not. Serge Ibaka, I do like Serge Ibaka at 7,300. I think he's another solid mid-range play. And I have a feeling I may have a lot of Raptors just due to the nature of this slate. Not a lot of places to go. There's only 4 games, and I want to attack one of the worst defensive teams in the league, and that is Cleveland. We all know how bad they are defensively, and they rate 24th versus power forwards, 23rd versus centers. They're bad just all around. And without Siakam and Gasol on the court, he's been over a point per minute with a 25% usage rate, and he's been playing just fine, 36, 33. 24 is rough, but then 38, and obviously 15, 44, 48. So he's been fine, so I don't mind Serge Ibaka at 7,300. He's got 40-point upside, if not more. Paul, not a lot of interest versus Dallas. DeRozan, you could look his way for game stacking this up. He's pretty cheap at 7,100, and he's been solid, 46, 34, 51, 31, and a little bit of a rough patch, 35, 43, 41. I don't think he's a bad play, and Golden State's one of the worst defensive teams in the league. They're going to be missing a lot of players, so I don't mind DeMar DeRozan if you just want exposure to this game. Let's see. Say Joseph Alexander, not a lot of interest. Jamal Murray, not a lot of interest. He's a little streaky. He does have upside, but he's also got a low floor as well. Will Barton, I don't mind him at 6,400. This is actually a very good matchup for Will Barton. Now, he's a pretty hit-or-miss player, but he does have a ceiling on him, but he has a lower floor as well. But it's a nice pace-up spot versus Houston, and I think that fits him pretty well. And this is definitely a beatable matchup, especially individually, as Houston ranks 29th versus small forwards. And this game should be decently high scoring, depending on if Harden plays or not. But either way, it's a good matchup versus Houston. He's about a point per minute player this season. He's going to get 30-plus minutes in a competitive game. I think Will Barton's a pretty solid mid-range play on this slate. 6,400 doesn't break the bank either. Now, Damian Lee, I like Damian Lee quite a bit at 6,200. We're going to have a lot of interest in these Warriors on this slate. And apparently Damian Lee is pretty good now. The past 3 games, 38, 34, 54, 20, and then a couple games after that, 29-32. He has been solid. He's been getting 30-plus minutes a night, and I think that's going to have to continue, especially with D'Lo being out, and also Willie Cauley-Stein's out as well, which doesn't really affect Damian Lee too much, but that's just more usage and minutes to go around for everybody. And with all these guys off the court, Damian Lee has a 20% usage rate and 0.91 points per minute, but his recent play is very encouraging, and I think he's got upside for more. I think he's going to get over a point per minute on tonight's slate. And, someone's got to score for the Warriors, and I think Damian Lee's going to be a part of that. And it's a good matchup, too, as he's going to start at shooting guard, and San Antonio struggles versus guards. They're ranked 21st versus the position, so Damian Lee, I think he's a solid play. He's got a 40-point upside here. Let's see. Where am I at? You can play Draymond Green. I don't hate it if you just want to play all these Warriors because there's just so many injuries. This is not my favorite player to play, although I did play him on Christmas versus Houston, and that was very nice. But I think you could expect 30-plus points out of Draymond here just because of all the injuries on this team. DeJounte Murray, if you want to get exposure to this game, 5,900 seems a little bit too cheap here. And it's a good matchup versus Golden State. They're 26 versus point guards, and he's not going to play 30-plus minutes ever, but if he's going to get me 25 to 28 minutes, he's been about 1.14 points per minute this season. I think he can hit 30 fantasy points in this matchup, so I would have some interest in Murray here at this price tag. Scrolling down, Daniel House is just too expensive, even if James Harden's out. 5,600 in a tough matchup versus Denver. I can't do that. Hartenstein, I think that's how you say his name, Hartenstein, maybe Harshenstein. Apologize if I'm saying this wrong. I did not watch the Rockets game. I did not hear his name being called. But he's been good the past two games without Capella. 27 points and 39 points. If Capella's out again, you could look his way. The only problem is he used to be free. Now he's not at all. And this is a really tough matchup versus Denver. So I think he's priced out to the point where I don't really like him too much. But if Harden's out and Capella's out, he's gonna be used. So I think he's got double upside. I just hate the matchup versus Denver. Alec Burks, I think he's one of the best plays on this slate. Only 5,300, and yeah, he cooled off a little bit the past three games, 22, 23, 22, but before that, he was hot. 48, 40, 34, 20, 35, 30, 41. He was very good. I think that we see more of that than we did the past three games. Should have a good game here. D'Lo's off the court, so open up some more minutes and usage. And we also saw the minutes dip the past three games, but they have no choice but to up his minutes back into the 30s with D'Lo being out. And running the numbers with D'Lo off the court, he has the highest usage rate on the team with a 24% usage rate, and he's over a point per minute. Great matchup as a point guard versus the Spurs, who are bottom 5 versus the position. So Alec Burks, you definitely have a lot of interest, and I think he's going to be one of the better plays on the entire slate. Tim Hardaway's questionable. Rudy Gay, again, if you just want exposure to this game, he's had two really good games in a row. Willie Cauley-Stein, he's going to be out, so that's going to open up some couple of value plays, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Let's see. Chris Boucher, not a lot. Gary Harris, he's questionable, is he? Okay, he's listed as probable, so they always trick me with that. But I was going to say, because I actually liked him. Questionable tech threw me off. But I like Gary Harris. I think he's an okay cash game play because he's only 4,800. The problem is I hate playing Gary Harris because he is dreadful on a point per minute basis. He plays monster minutes. He's going to play about 35-plus minutes. Only problem is he's only averaging 0.66 points per minute, which is absolutely terrible. But it's a good matchup versus Houston. You can't really ask for much of a better matchup as a shooting guard versus Houston. Just know he's a very terrible point per minute player, but he does have some upside. We've seen him. He scored 36 points versus the Lakers, which is a really tough matchup, so that's a little bit surprising. But I think he can get you 20 to 25 plus points here. 4,800, I think, is a decent cash game play just because of the matchup and the pace-up spot. PJ Tucker, you would think he would have been better with Clint Capella being out, but that's just really not been the case. He's playing huge minutes, but 19 points, 11 points, 18 points. I don't like the form he's been in. Probably going to have to pass on him. He's not been showing potential the past three games with Capella being out. It's a tough matchup versus Denver anyway, so I'm probably going to pass on PJ Tucker. Not my favorite play in the world. And if Harden's out, obviously it should open up some more, but don't really like PJ Tucker quite a bit. Paul Millsap's going to miss this game. So, Jeremy Grant, he's going to see more minutes. I don't even know what his price is, to be honest. So he's 4,600. You could actually look his way. Did see 33 minutes in the last game versus Sacramento. Had 26 fantasy points. It's a good matchup versus Houston as a power forward. Center's a little bit rough, but obviously he's going to play power forward with Nikola Jokic. So don't mind Jeremy Grant here. Don't think he's a bad play. A good matchup versus Houston. It's a pace-up spot. You could look his way at 4,600. Not the worst play in the world. Not my favorite play in the world either. Eric Gordon, if James Harden happens to be out. He had a solid game returning from injury. He had 22 minutes, 28 fantasy points, 20 points, 1 board, 3 assists. I said Harden out with Russell Westbrook being out in the last game. No, Harden was out as well. Yeah, Harden was out, Westbrook was out, Capella was out. Yeah. So they were missing everybody. Still 22 minutes, 20 points was not too bad. They raised his price to 4,700. Tough matchup versus Denver, but if Harden's out, he'll see some extended minutes. So I wouldn't hate using Eric Gordon, but I don't like the matchup. See, scoring down some more. Austin Rivers with Russell Westbrook being back, not a lot of interest. Let's see. Ben McLemore would see a bump with no James Harden, but again, I have no idea if he's going to play or not. You could look Glenn Robinson's way just because of all the injuries on this team. Not the most exciting player in the world, a little bit of a low floor, but he's had some upside games before. He had 30 points versus Houston, 26 points versus Phoenix. Not a bad matchup versus San Antonio. Just more of a lineup filler kind of guy. Let's see. Marquise Chris. I was waiting to get on this guy because he's pretty much the lock of the slate at 4,100. We're going to have to play him. Had a very good game last time out versus Dallas in 17 minutes. He had 29 fantasy points, and he's just the lock of the slate. Willie Cauley-Stein is out, so he should flirt with 30 minutes here, and I don't think he's going to get 30 minutes, maybe if he's playing well, but I think he's going to get you at least 25 minutes, 25, 27 minutes, something like that. And without those guys on the court, he's averaging a 20% usage rate and 1.09 points per minute. He's got a pretty high ceiling. I remember the one game, I think it was when Spellman was chalky and Marquise Chris was ultra chalk, and I believe he had, it was versus Utah, right? Yeah, 42 fantasy points. Yeah, 3,800. He played 23 minutes, had 42 fantasy points, absolutely destroyed the world. Was that right? I feel like it was another game, but I think it was versus Utah. He absolutely smashed. I think it was this Utah game where he had 42 fantasy points. It was unbelievable, to be honest. But he's going to see big minutes here. No Willie Cauley-Stein, so you got to have interest in Marquise Chris here. And then you could also look at his teammate Kai Bowman, who comes in at 3,100. Now, he is questionable with an illness, but I am hoping he plays, because if he plays, it's going to open up a lot of value on this slate, because he is just 100 off the bare minimum. And I expect him to get about 25 to 30 minutes here with D'Angelo Russell being off the court. And just running the numbers with him off, he's averaging 0.72 points per minute, which doesn't sound great, but he's also only 3,100, so it doesn't have to be great. And this is a great matchup versus the Spurs, as they suck versus guards, which I've said multiple times on this video. So you could look Kai Bowman's way if he happens to play, but as of right now, he is questionable. So there's a lot of injury news on this slate, so hopefully this video was a little bit helpful. We've got to wait on all this injury news. It's going to change pretty much the whole slate, but I tried my best to get you guys through this. Again, this slate sucks. If you just want to pass it and just enjoy your New Year's Eve, I totally understand it, but just know if you have any questions, you can comment below. If you're interested in my spreadsheet, I'll have that updated up until lock. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great New Year's, and I'll see you in the next, I already said that again, but I'll say it for a third time. See you in the next video.